Rachel.
How are you?
I am feeling very well. I have that sense of accomplishment, sense of achievement, sense of completion.
I'm feeling at ease. Come to a point of acceptance that we're wrapping up the Expanse show, which, you know, has been a great experience, and we are continuing to engage with it as an IP. We are reading the books, and if you're interested to hear our thoughts on those,
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. On the Patreon is better.
You get those early.
Yeah, they'll come out much earlier there.
And I have a question for you, Rachel, right here, right now, that everyone is dying to know the answer to, which is, who would have said yum yum in The Expanse? Who would have said it?
There's a couple of different contenders, and it depends on what context you want to go with and in what way you mean yum yum, because we've come at that singular line from Star Trek Discovery so many different ways over the years now. Like, are you talking about it in the horny factor? Because that's what we talked about when we talked about The Expanse. But also there's the what the fuckness of it.
The funniness of it. It's supposed to be a humorous line.
Yeah. And it also like came out of left field. So it's just like, which approach do I take? Because I feel like each of them, you could kind of give a different character and give a different, be justified.
Yes, of course.
In that interpretation.
You don't think there's many characters, if any, that could hold all of those different ways and pull it off?
You know,
if Discovery can do it.
Well, Star Trek Discovery didn't pull it off either.
It inspired us, so it must have done something right. Or definitely wrong.
Yeah.
Man.
Stole the words. You stole the words. I think, for me, there is a clear contender who could manage all three.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, I feel like could manage at least two of them.
That's right.
And that's Monica. I feel like, because she had the sexiness, the horniness by trying to like sleep with Amos to get information. She also has some like offbeat lines of being like,
she'd be very flippant.
Yes, especially when she's during her phase of being on the Rossi. Afterwards, and like when she's working with the UN, not so much.
When she was working with Holden, there was a bit of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a bit of like, she had looser lips when she was with them. So that's the sexiness and what the fuckness. What did I say was the other aspect?
Monica's funny.
Yes.
Monica's very funny. If she said yum yum, I could get a laugh out of that. Especially the actress. I think she, out of most of the people, could pull off the yum yum line so easily with her delivery.
And it could be fairly organic if she's like, when she deal with the tube food.
The which one?
The food that's in the tubes.
I can't recall if she dealt with the food in the tube. She had leftover noodles from Holden that one time.
Yeah, which would have been a very...
That would have been a yum yum moment. I have my pick.
She did like them.
She did like them. That's one of my favorite moments. I'll say that right now to jump ahead a bit. That wasn't one of my favorite moments of the show, is Monica getting leftover noodles and proceeding to love it. But
I'd be annoyed that she loved it. Oh, that was
so good. But I have a pick for who would have said yum yum, because as stated, this is from Star Trek Discovery, and that line could go many different ways, and it means so much to us. It's the name of the podcast. It's what we rate things. It's a season 4 character.
Mercury.
Not at all. Incorrect.
The Amos's fuck buddy.
Incorrect. Wrong. Shaking my head at you.
Not Ginger Kid.
Not Little Orphan Annie, no. No. That would have been awesome.
Sorry, I just really stepped on it, but just trying to guess.
After the kid went blind.
You got me excited.
You are very excited. My answer is... I do not remember the character's name, but I remembered my nickname for them, which is Blondie, which is the right-hand woman in the mafia gang that Bobby joins that she spars with throughout the whole season with a short blonde pixie cut.
Girlfriend?
Yes, her nephew's boyfriend. No, her nephew's girlfriend. I mean, she did have a boyish haircut. I could see the confusion.
No.
But she had blonde pixie cut. That character... she was the one that said, "Give me the yum yum, Ryan." I could do it all of those ways in the same breath, and I give it to her. I don't even remember her name, but I remember that she had the yum yum potential in her veins, and that's very important to us. And what's really important now is to just pick up on the general vibes and thoughts of The Expanse, because as we are here now, we have concluded it, we can sit back and reflect. We don't have to worry about keeping our lips a bit tight because, well, maybe this will prove us wrong later. Now we have the full picture of the series, not the books, but the series as it is. We can just say how we feel about the show. Rachel, what are your general opinions on The Expanse?
The note that I made for this is enjoyable yet frustrating. Because there was so much that I loved, and I got so frustrated when it wasn't delivering what I knew that it could. Like, even when we were watching the first season, you had this sense of they can do better. And we knew that they did get there. It had that advantage of us watching the show once it's been wrapped up.
The reputation it held did precede it, so there was a level of us giving it a bit more of a fair shake in those rougher parts because, well, it's growing pains.
Yes, and it was interesting tracking that alongside, your process of being like, and this is where I dropped off.
Because I did initially watch it week to week when it first came out. It just didn't hold my attention. It wasn't as if it did anything bad or did a huge misstep. It just did not make me want to keep watching week to week. And so I did drop off at some point.
Yeah, it's a show that I'm overall satisfied with, but I'm frustrated by it at the same time. I feel like the show never fully got me on side, which is interesting because I feel like that's a fairly unique thing that's happened with me with the shows that we've covered week to week. But I kept on going back and forth with The Expanse because it would do stuff that I loved, that I was interested in and that I was invested in. And then it would go back on those things. And it made me fall in love with these characters. So the biggest positive for me is the characters. Another big thing that I adore is the way that it truly, deeply, earnestly, and meaningfully approaches its themes. And the way that most of the seasons have something to add to the thematic messaging, right? It's not just saying the same exact thing over and over again. It's adding another complication but it all kind of reaffirms these sort of central beliefs or central truths about this universe. And I love having such a clear idea of this world, and that you kind of feel like it is a whole world.
To them, We will always be slaves. That's all we are to the earthers and dusters. They built their solar system on our backs. Spit the blood of 1,000,000 of our brothers, but in their eyes, we are not even human anymore.
The thing that I kept coming back to as my central belief of the series overall is it's a grower. It grows over time. It's a snowball of a series. I wasn't impressed by the first season when I first saw it, and when we did it on the podcast, when we completed the first season, it was good. But as we kept going and going and going, I can't help but appreciate the first season in retrospect. Another thing that I think of overall as my general opinion of the series that is both a positive and a negative, it's a real double-edged sword, is the fact that it tells its story because of it being an adaptation of a book series in a way that is different to how other shows do it, but also not truly that different. But there's this sense of you are going to, after a certain period of time, reset or completely change the status quo, change the game, change the board, and it can be very abrupt because we didn't have the benefit for half of the show of those change-ups happening at the end of, at the start of a new series. That's how most TV shows approach these things. Not all, but most TV shows, especially of its contemporaries. You have a season-long story, and then we move on. So when you come back next year, and Naomi's no longer on the Rocinante, and she's got a new haircut and a chest tattoo, it's not as much of a jarring thing, and you yourself can accept it. But that is how the show worked, and it was unique. It was different. I think about that, and I think about how that's just the nature of the beast of this being an adaptation of the books, and this is how the books end. This is when the books end. They work in these trilogy formats, so when you get to the end of season 3, there's a finality to it. But in terms of a television show, especially one in the golden age of TV, as they say, the streaming age, where we have serialization, it's odd, isn't it? It is both a positive and negative when I think about the show overall. But yes, I do love it. I think it raises a lot of questions, but as you say, characters. It's the character work and the people that we're spending the time with that mattered to me the most. I honestly don't give a fuck about the bigger story of the proto-molecule, the ancient beings, the ring entities, all of that. That's just backdrop. That's just means to an end to get us to these great characterful moments that explore deeper themes. Where do you want to go from here, Rachel?
Let's stay with the positives. And I want to hear, what was one of your favorite moments in the whole of the show?
I shall go with a funny moment. I've already revealed my hand and said the moniker getting the leftover noodles with Holden was one of them, but the top funny moment is one that I said would be when it happened, and it never got topped, which is Melba / Clarissa Mao, after having fucked everything up in her life, trying to kill James Holden, yes. Looking at footage of Holden, trying to pump herself up to keep on the path of revenge, to keep on this bloody, violent mentality, and she sees on the footage James Holden is an affable goofball who, when questioned about how he's open, how he is in part responsible for everything that's happened, he just deflects it with a offhanded comment about makes me want a donut. And we just get Clarissa Mao's face scrunch up, and you see she starts to realize that she's wasted and ruined her entire life trying to get a guy.
This is the guy.
This is the man that I'm doing this all for. That to me was the funniest thing the show ever did. I'm smiling as I'm talking about it because that's the type of humor I love about The Expanse. And that's something else that I think about too, is the humor of the series is underrated for sure. Everyone loves their big, iconic, funny moments, like Amos talking about how he works in space, he has a background walking in heels and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like that's a big iconic funny moment, but I think this series had a very unique and quiet underlying humor to it.
I only have one that's kind of funny, and that's Holden being like, there was a button, I pushed it.
That's how you live your life,
like,
isn't it? That's how you live your life, isn't it?
Yes.
You fucking idiot. I can't remember if that was before or after the sequence in which James Holden was telling Colonel Fred Johnson what is the most military-wise strategy in the room. And he's like, I know what the fuck it is. Do you know who the fuck I am?
Hey,
I'm Fred Johnson, motherfucker.
Butcher.
Oh, he didn't flex that, but yeah, no, I love that.
No, he's ashamed of that.
Why is that a moment that stands out?
Because it is just so true to Holden that he just keeps on finding himself in the place with the button, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's at the center of the fucking universe. And then he's just so dumb about saying it. He's just like, oh yeah, it's this simple.
Another favorite bit of the series for me that does have a quietness to it, but I think about it often, which is when you have Christian talking to her husband via the communication, and there's the delay happening. She's under the assumption that Earth is about to get destroyed by Eros Station, and he's stuck on the moon, and they're having this frayed conversation. They love each other, it means everything to one another. They can talk, but they aren't able to talk succinctly, and their relationship is not perfect, but it is perfect in this moment. Brian George gave a great performance. It's a fantastic scene. It's one that stands out in an episode of great bombacity with high highs.
That it takes the time to be quiet.
It takes the time to be quiet. I'll mention one other before I throw it over to you, and this is the moment that really matters, which is when James Holden became one of the greatest characters of the show, and it's because it's when he became very funny to me. And that is in the season 3 premiere episode, he turns to Prax, looks him dead in the eyes and says, I didn't give a fuck about
your daughter.
I didn't give a fuck about your daughter. I was using you. I loved that moment, and it really did help me that's a horrible thing to say, but the way it was delivered from Stephen Strait and what it did for the character overall of people, you think back on it, it really did open up James Holden to the viewer. It opened him up. He became much more of a self-aware character, and I think from that point on, they really utilized Stephen Strait's strengths, which is being comedic. He is a comedic actor. If you look at some of his previous works, I know it's been a bit of a joke on here on the podcast, but he was in Sky High. Sky High is a very funny movie. Yes, it's a children's film, but it's a funny movie. He is funny in it as the brooding, self-serious character in a silly movie.
Yeah.
And he's really good at that kind of po-faced, grim, dark humor delivery of the most absurd shit you've ever heard. And they really started to use that. So that moment is so important to me in the series because Holden was a character we didn't get on with. But over the course of time, I think they as writers started figuring out the character better and started utilizing the actor more.
Well, the question is, because I have 2 pairs of moments left. Do you want my Amos picks now or save them for last?
Save them for last. We've got to give the audience something to hunger for.
Okay. Well, then it's my 2 sad moments that I was just like, those moments meant a lot to me as a viewer.
I'm trying to make choices on my own lately, and I can't seem to make the right ones. No one's always right.
And the first one that I want to say is kind of a whole set of scenes. Like, it's
of
not
course.
like, I'm like, yeah, I could say that the, like, you know, the pinnacle scene is kind of the moment, but it's this
It's the tableau.
whole, it's the whole thing and the build up to that moment. And that's Ashford and Drummer talking when they're pinned. It's so much more than him trying to sacrifice himself. And her doing the same. But it explores and forces them to see each other in a way that they probably never would otherwise. And it says so much about these two people and the culture that they represent, being both belters, that they need to be in such a physical, vulnerable state to be this emotionally vulnerable.
Of course. It's a scene that opens up Ashford to the viewer as well, because before then he is mysterious.
Yeah, and we're like, he's
villainous and
mutiny,
coy.
man. Come on, just hurry up and do your fucking mutiny.
That's how they got in that conversation in the first place.
Yeah.
She's like, are you going to try and fuck me over? And he's like, no, I would never do such. Uh-oh, now we're pinned.
Yeah.
And they're stuck there kind of knowing what the other one thinks of the other. So that gets flipped on its head. So what's your other sad moment that you love?
Naomi saying to Philip, basically, like, he will ask you, your father will ask you to die for him. He won't do it for you. He will ask everything of you, and he will not give you anything. He will not think that he owes you anything. And that being just so true of what we know of Marco.
And we haven't known him that long in relative terms at that point.
No, and that really feeling like it's the seed of Philip becoming his own person and splintering from his father. That was just so pivotal, so important, and also like a key part of the sort of thematic exploration when it comes to Marco is like the danger of a charismatic figure that will ask so much of you and not deliver on their promises, because their promises are way bigger than anything they could actually do.
For myself, as a viewer, as someone who consumes media and entertainment, and I'm drawn to the characters we follow, oftentimes what I find to be the thing that anchors me and makes me think about them and look back on them is either a key action that they took or a key piece of observation that they have or someone has about them. And with Marco, you've nailed it with that one. That's what I think of as well. When I think about Marco, it's not the fact that he is her ex or that he threw rocks at Earth. Those are very important to the story, but I think about that exact conversation, that exact interrogation of his character, that he's the type of person that will ask you to die for him, but he would never die for you. And I think about that so often. One of my favorite moments of the show actually does connect with that a little bit as well, which is Anna Volovodov herself. She has so many great scenes and sequences, it's hard to choose just one.
Can I guess?
You can guess.
The eulogy?
It was going to be the eulogy. The eulogy is a fantastic set piece. But when I think back of Anna, the thing that comes into my mind is a look. The look that she gives after she tells Ehrenreich and the rest of the room about how collective punishment is still a war crime. Look it up. And she gives this really like confident, indignant look over to Ehrenreich, and you see he is calculating the risk that she's bringing him. That there is one of my favorite things the show ever did. It's one of our introduction points to that character of Anna, but it also tells you so much about Ehrenreich. But that look, Elizabeth Mitchell gives, just this as she's holding the wine in her hand, I love that bit. I think it's one of the greats. But to connect to her, I think my favorite thing in the show. There's so many things that it could be. I loved the violence conversation that we got with Peaches in the last season. But to me, what often kept tying things back into a lot of the hefty stuff we love to talk about on the series was actually in the first season. The conversation between Miller and that random Mormon. A random character who wasn't afforded a name and we never saw again, and we don't need to see anything of them or know anything more of them. That conversation to me is maybe not the best of the entire show, but it's the most important to me. It was what really opened up that this had more going on than just Chris Jen's an awesome character. That conversation was the writers tapping into something a lot more.
Oh, you're going to do something with this.
The metaphysical, the theological, the spiritual. And I'm not a spiritual person. I'm not a religious person. But if a piece of media, especially one that is trying to paint on such a huge canvas, the name of the show is The Expanse. And if you are going to have your sci-fi thing about the future of humanity and how things have and have not changed, and The Expanse be the name of the frickin' thing, and you aren't going to even touch upon the things that conversation between the Mormon and Miller were going on about, then you failed. But they didn't. They went there, and they would continuously keep going there over the course of the series. I would have loved it if they did it more, because I think it was them as writers, their strongest stuff. That conversation is, to me, the glue. That there is the glue that held a lot of these bigger talking points together.
We referred back to that so much. I limited myself to 2 Amos moments. I went for 2 different modes of Amos. Oh yeah, he's scary.
Your favorite.
And, oh, there's my lovable buffoon.
You're the favorite, I see.
Yeah. It's going to be so hard deciding who my favorite character of this show is going to be later.
It's going to be a shock when it's actually Bobby. Could you imagine, listeners, if Rachel pulled that trick on you? So, what are these Amos moments? Tell us in all the raw, juicy details.
When he says to Prax, I am that guy. It's just, like, he is the violent person. He's the person that you don't want to fuck with. He is the person that will go in there and get the shit done. It's just so important, and it just hits. And that's obviously the badass Amos moment. And the other moment that I had down is very early on in the show. And it has a special place in my heart, because I just find it hilarious. And it's him being like, yeah, Naomi's like my sister.
And yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I'd fuck her.
I would fuck her if she'd let me. She's like my sister, though. Other than it's very funny, which it is, you're laughing at it. But here's a lot of funny moments. Why is that such a standout?
Because it feels very specific to Amos as a character, and to the sense of humor that the show finds with him, as well as the character himself, right? And I love the reaction that it gets from Holden.
Okay. He's shocked, but all right.
Like, I was worried that you were going to beat the fuck out of me, so I'm not going to push this, but okay, I have that information now. But also, the way that it communicates Amos thinks about sex. Because you look at him and you go, that's a hunky dude. But, like, the way that he's just so direct about it.
Sex is a very practical and
yeah,
transactional
like, it's very,
thing at times.
Like,
It's something desired, but it's...
basal. Like, very limited emotions when it comes to sex. It's not like, I really care about Naomi. She's like a sister to me, but I am deeply attracted to her and love her and would like to express that sexually. It's not like an unrequited love thing.
No, not at all.
Which
is what I worried about at the start.
Like, it could be constructed that way, right? But it's not. It's not in any way seen like that because of the way that the show presents that information, right? Like, a different inflection and different responses, that series of lines would be completely different in its meaning. But it relies on us knowing the character, and it really is just something that I thought back on.
Hey, I'm glad that me and Naomi being together isn't an issue for you.
Oh, no. She's a good person and I like her, but she's like a sister to me.
Right.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd do her if she let me.
I'm glad we had this talk.
I just want to get some of these off my chest. These are not even like the worst things of the show, but they are the things that tripped us up. A lot of my things that trip me up are the ones that are so overtly a function and then they throw it out. Havelock is overtly there to serve a purpose, throw him out. The other one being the entire season 4 election plot with Christian. I think it's one of the worst things the show ever did. It's one of my least favorite aspects of the series. I think they tried to do something on an intellectual level that's impressive, but it was just too ham-fisted and obviously driven to the end goal that they had in mind, but it didn't feel real to me. That's one. And the other one that just trips me up even more so is Season 2 and 3, Bobby's arc and journey is basically the same, and I don't see the reasoning as to why. Bobby's a Marine who gets disillusioned, she stands up for what she thinks is right, and then she has to mutiny against or railroad the Martian Marines and government to help save the day in her big-ass mech suit or whatever the case may be. And that just tripped me up too, because it's like, Bobby could be an interesting character, but you don't know what to do with her, so just kind of do the same thing again.
So I found it hard to think of my least favorite moments because a lot of them kind of blended together, because if I didn't like a specific thing, it was more that it was like representative of a subplot that I wasn't enjoying or a character I didn't give a fuck about. So the main one that I had down was Murtry's speech.
Which one?
His final one.
Like
the post office one. Because it thought it was doing something great. And Bern Gorman's there just acting his fucking heart out. And I'm just like, shut the fuck up. Yo, anchor.
Why did that speech itself cross the line? Because, as you said, it's a lot of the plot and the character work.
It's a villain monologue when he's been nothing but a villain the whole time and never enough of a threat that you think that he's actually gonna win. So it's just like, how long are they going to take to fucking take him down? Because they know that he's a threat from the drop. He establishes himself as that. He doesn't hide it, even though he pretends to hide it, which is boring. And then you finally get to the point and it's so much emphasis and so much production behind this speech telling you, this is who I am and this is what I believe. And
yeah.
like, he's just talking at us and I'm like, Come on, show.
Did you know
Get
Murtry's...
to the fucking point.
And they got there in the end, and it was a very obvious point.
Yeah.
Did you know Murtry is one of the biggest points of contention that this podcast has ever had? We've spoken some mad shit about things that I thought would get greater pushback, but Murtry is one of the things we got the greatest amount of pushback because we thought of him, as you just said, obvious villain man who does obvious villain things and then ends with a big villain monologue. There's a lot of people who go to bat for Murtry as like that antagonist who has a point. For us as viewers, it was too blatant and it was stretched out to a degree where it was not as interesting. They didn't handle it with that meticulous ease in the way that they did with other obvious bad guys. Like Aaron Wright's one of my go-to guys. He's an obvious bad guy.
Threat, but he is a viable threat.
And a slow
he's
burn
an
one.
Insidious one.
Well, I'm here to build post offices is such a lame...
No, I'm the guy that you send in.
Yeah. It's so lame.
He's
lame.
He's there before the post office, right?
Oh, my Lord. Now, I have 3 top hitters for least favorite things. I'll go through them because I think people will not be surprised. The entire Laconia thing with the kids especially, I won't belabor the point. I don't agree with the way they told it. I just don't agree. I just don't agree with the. I don't see the reason why they told it the way they told it and why they included it the way they included it, other than for the cynical reasons we went through last time.
Yep.
The second one is again related to the Christian election plot, which is the scene of the general resigning because he doesn't trust her motives.
Yeah.
And yet there's no way that makes sense with what we were shown of him seeing Christian in action. That resign speech is one of the most atrocious things the show has ever done.
I just thought of another moment.
Go ahead.
Ashanti's appearance. Like it's mother, right? That she appears. And it's just like, oh, this daughter that has never really been mentioned or acknowledged
is here. And then we never see her again. She never came back.
No.
She never factored into the plot.
And then she never came back. And she's even acknowledged in the one ship.
She's acknowledged in the one ship.
But it's just like, oh, God, you had to have her to have this moment because it feels like a big moment. But because we have no context for who she is, it's got no weight to it in the show.
No.
And it's just like, oh, okay.
It makes, what I was going to say is now it just makes Christian seem a little less tragic because, well, actually she has family left. Mm-hmm. She has her daughter.
And her
that we never
grandchildren.
mentioned. This scene I'm going to reference here is written in such a fucking wanky writers being cutesy way that if another show did it, you wouldn't be forgiving of it. But if this show does it that you like, you're forgiving of it.
Can I say
No, I'm just going to say it.
I'm thinking of?
No, I'm just going to say it because I just can't get it off my chest quick enough, which is I had a pet rat that I named Mouse speech from Bobby. That fucking speech is so fucking pretentious. And it doesn't sound like Bobby at all. And I'm not a Bobby fan, so I have a bias there. But that speech, if fucking Owo from Star Trek Discovery said it, we would always be making fun of it. But we didn't make fun of it all the time in this show because there's so much other stuff to go on about. Oh, I have a pet rat named Mouse. Shut the fuck up, Bobby. You're lying. You've never had a pet rat named Mouse. I don't believe... You know what it was? It was, to me, that was a filler. We need these actors for these amount of episodes.
That whole
I don't know. Give Bobby
the Razorback felt like that.
Give Bobby
something.
We got to check in with Bobby, and I guess she has
time
a
of
pet,
the episode.
It's a Bobby check-in, and she has a pet rat named Mouse now. Fuck you. Fuck off. I can forgive Laconia because I understand on a structure, big play level what it's supposed to do. I can understand the attempt of a point, the general stepping down was supposed to be, but that speech about a rat named Mouse, I am not going to abide by. I do not condone. I'm wagging my finger at the writers and saying, bad. Bad, 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 bad. You can do better than this, and you will do better than this. But that speech, ooh, it really did make it hard to stay on Bobby's side for the rest of the series. Because every now and then she would do something like, oh, she's great. And then I think about, but she had a pet rat named Mouse.
I have a third category of moments
Ooh,
to talk about.
What are they? Number 3. What is it?
Moments so bad they were good. Because there are some moments that they're just so bad they're funny. Like, they're fucking hilarious to me.
Well, okay. I've got one right now. Havelock getting impaled on a wall through the fucking chest. Then he somehow is there overnight, survives, falls down,
Yes.
and is alive, writhing in the literal trash.
That was one of my two. My exact wording was Havelock emerging from the literal trash. Like, that moment is just, it's just so bad.
I don't know what they were thinking.
It's just
That's
so
so
bad.
Oh my god.
In the best kind of way, because it's just so ridiculous.
And what makes it even better is he lives to then never be seen again or referred to again.
He gets thrown away by the show.
Why did they just kill him?
Yes.
There's this bit later where he gets revenge for Havelock, but it's like, why? Who cares? Havelock wouldn't care. Havelock actively wouldn't care. He lived in the trash. Oh, if he was in the final season and they found him as a homeless man in trash, that would have saved that. That would have been like a neat little setup payoff.
But the other one that I had written down was killer slugs.
Oh my god, you're right. Oh my god, you're right. And the even better part of I have one that goes into that too, which is you're a family and your daughter's leaving, but we have a little redheaded orphan child. Surely you'll want to adopt them, even though what we've seen of your family denotes that you wouldn't. But here's a kid.
Do-over. Have at it.
Wow, Rachel got real loud for that one because it's a do-over, baby. You're getting another kid. You're going to have another kid.
Do it better this time.
Oh, I got one. It's all in that season 4. You're right. Which is Holden and Dr. Elvie are having a casual conversation about the virus that's going around. Oh my God, isn't it scary? And then a shockwave happens and the glass from the windows all around them smashes.
No cuts.
And hits them in the eyes and the face.
No cuts, no damage, nada.
And they don't duck. They don't take any, they don't try.
Nope.
They have time, but they don't. The way that was executed, absolutely hilarious. That's I would play that scene as hey, The Expanse is a serious show while I play clown music over it. You know how there's those montage, those clip collections of The Expanse being a serious show for 8 minutes and they just show the dumb shit? That would be what I start the video with. That would be my one where it just plays clown music over it. And it's just holding me, oh my God, he's on, but not really because he was perfectly fine. The slugs, though.
The slugs.
That might be the funniest plot point they ever introduced in the show. That's hilarious because the thing that made it funnier was we had people push back and be like, no, that's scary. And then it's oh, well, I can't wait to see how it pans out. Episode later, it's done.
And it's gone.
You know when slugs things are scary? Wrath of Khan. That was they were fucking scary because they burrowed into your ears and controlled you. That was scary. These ones were just like gloopy slugs. Then you go, ah, and then you're dead.
What is happening?
Those slugs. They killed them.
We have each selected top 3 episodes. That's where we're going to start.
Third season had a lot of great material. So much great material in there. And it's a bounty. But this is one of the greatest episodes of the show. It's already been talked about. It is Immolation. The episode with the I Am That Guy. When they take down Mao, when they stop Ehrenreich and he gets arrested. It's just a spectacular piece of television. I don't have too much to say that is more than just that is what TV is made for. It's such a satisfying piece of business on an emotional level, but also it's spectacle. It's got some great action stuff. We lose people along the way, but we also save people along the way. The catharsis of Amos helping Prax find his kid and then all of the stuff that happens from there. Spectacular piece of television. It's in my top 3. I thought that was absolutely amazing. What is your third episode?
This episode, it just has a special place for me. And I think it has a really good balance of all of its plots, and it's moving things forward, but it's also doing a good job at deepening your understandings of all of these different characters and where they're at and where they came from. And I don't think it'll be a surprise to anybody that I felt compelled to include this episode on my list.
Of course.
And that's Churn. It has these great moments with Amos, but also like Holden and Fred dealing with the situation on Tycho, and the fact that I didn't feel angry that the episode was taking time away from Amos in Baltimore was a really good sign for me, because it does balance the needs of all of these plots fairly well. But it's one that, for me, it really strongly highlights how all of these characters are being true to themselves and being challenged and pulled in different directions and having meaningful conversations and reflecting on their own decisions and their lives and the consequences of those things personally and in a broader sense as well. Like, it really focuses in on the cost of your choices.
Great pick. My number 2 is quite an obvious one. It is Home. Home is a fantastic episode. It has everything in it that I need. It has the high stakes there with planet Earth is literally at risk and you feel like they could lose. There's this great sense of community. Everyone is working independently but together to try and manage this crisis. There's so many individual moving pieces there. Yet, it does not forget to take the time to have these sad but beautiful scenes of just people reconciling their lives before they could be snuffed out. Christian and her husband, but also Miller. Everything with Miller in that episode is great. It's some of Thomas Jane's best work of the series. Home is one of the great episodes. People love it. And I'm a basic bitch. I loved it too. I think it's a great episode. What about you?
Well, I guess I'm a copycat, because my number 2 is Immolation. I just kind of echo everything that you said about it. For me, as like, in addition to that, it's just a beautifully crafted episode of television. It is just, everything is working together to make it greater than the sum of its parts. Like, it's just so finely woven together. And it's so meaningful because of the solid foundation that it's built on. And we've gotten to this point where it's fucking insane shit happening.
Oh, yeah.
In every single one of those plots that's going on. And you care and you feel the depth and the weight of all of those things. But because of the pacing, you don't get bogged down in any of it. You're rolling with it. And it doesn't feel like you're not feeling the cogs.
My final one, my number one favorite episode of the show is also in season 3. Season 3 is so filled to the brim with quality episodes, quality scenes, quality characters. And I said it as well when it happened, and it never did get bested for me. Dandelion Sky. That is an episode that really just has what I'm looking for in The Expanse. It has it all. We get the teasing out and the puzzle pieces of the lore, with Holden learning about what the rings are all about and the threat that they bring with them. But we have all of these amazing sequences of the characters wrestling with who they are and what they're about, and this new frontier they find themselves in, all beautifully captured with Anna's entire story in that episode of her not paying attention to someone who was needing her help, and then they died, and she feels the guilt of it. But it does not stop her from being the person she is, and in fact motivates her to be the person she is even more. We get that beautiful eulogy speech, but also it's a gorgeous looking episode. It's one of the episodes that takes place inside of the ring space, which is a very abstract and weird locale, but the way that they brought it to life on the screen, it had this serene quality to it, although still menacing and alien, truly. There's a sense of calmness when you're in there.
I was kind of tossing up between a couple of episodes for my top slot. Dandelion Sky, obviously one of them. But I reached the decision to put this, like the one that I put in, as my top episode, what I think is the best episode, because of the way that it brought everything together. Because they didn't stick the landing all of the time with the convergence of all of the plots. Because, like, being an ensemble show and wanting to showcase, the Expanse, we have different characters in different places that are kind of maybe working together or coming at things differently. And when things converge and it really hits home, is in Home. That episode, again, is greater than the sum of its parts. And I think, looking back, that moment was the most I felt the threat to the entire galaxy. Is that moment, and the rest of the show relies on you having felt the gravity of that situation.
We have to begin evacuation. Use every available ship and transport. We'll need a lottery system and to control public hysteria.
There's only one option left. For planetary defenses. A massive missile launch at Eros.
The odds are good that we'd destroy it. Or at least turn it into a million pebbles.
Whatever biotoxin is inside Eros, can it survive in a vacuum, or do we risk scattering it all over the system?
Sadly, there's no time to conduct a study to satisfy your curiosity.
We're going to go through a top 3 of our worst/least favorite episodes, and I'll go first again. I have one from season 1, and it was Back to the Butcher. I remember we didn't like that episode very much. It was an episode that tried to do stuff, but we just did not get on with it. And it's one that I will admit that perhaps when we revisit the series, we will appreciate, because it was a foundation episode. It was setting up a lot of the foundation work, and it was one of the first episodes of the series to do something stylistically different in its storytelling, with the flashback gimmick that was sprinkled throughout, which would become a very good type of storytelling thing of the Expanse, where they would have these things sprinkled throughout an episode that were a bit disjointed but made a thematic point or a narrative point. And so I put it here to just flag up, like, it didn't work for us, but I think about it. And I think about how, although it fell short for us, it is important, because I think it was the first swing at something that they would have hits on pretty much on the regular from this point on.
My number 3 is also from season 1. And when I was thinking back on the episodes and looking through the lists, it was episodes that I was just like, I felt like you let the show down. I was rooting for you, and
you dropped the ball.
So there's this sort of resentment against the episode because of its failure. And here, it's a weird one to kind of pick, because it's just like, well, it's kind of an easy thing to pick on, which is the pilot, Dulcinea, is my number 3, because it failed to sell the show to me, and it's already hard to sell setup to me, but I was just like, Holden's a fucking wanker.
True.
A pompous fucking wanker. Why the fuck do I care about him?
Well, he has sex. That makes me care. He's a good man.
Yep.
He the distress call, he picks up on it. He's a good guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're right, the first episode is not one I think about ever.
No.
I don't really think about it because it doesn't leave that big of a mark. There are elements of the first season that are so important that we think about as we go forward, but the first episode is not one of them that we think often that much about.
But it's where everything starts.
It is. My second least favorite episode is from season 5, and it is Hard Vacuum. The episode has the main thing be that Naomi is stuck on the ship with little oxygen, and she's having to come up with these crafty ways to solve her problem. And I wish that was the episode. I just wish that was the episode. I wish that they were brave enough and willing enough to take that type of a swing, but they didn't do it. And it's a clear case of, in a book where you get whole chapters dedicated to a single character and their point of view and what they're in, I can only imagine that stuff with Naomi is far more engaging, riveting, and if you're into that thing, it works for you more. While in the show, it didn't work for me. The rest of the episode is also just meandering and fine. It kind of is doing what it needs to do, but when I think of the series, I think of Hard Vacuum being a clear standout of, you could have done something better or something a little bit more, and they backed off. Or they just didn't want to step up to that plate in the way that I was wanting it, hoping it, and honestly needing it at that point as well.
When we started, I had and still have 2 written down, kind of tied, and I was just like still umming and ahhing about what I disliked more. Because one is for very similar reasons as to why my number 3 was what it was. And then my other was one that I was just like, I don't know, I don't remember a single nice thing that I had to say about this episode. And the latter was, you want to guess?
No, please do tell.
Was Back to the Butcher.
Wow.
Because I was like, no, I was like reading the description. I was like, no, I don't remember. I don't remember that, but I remember disliking that. And that means that thing happened. Oh God. But I'm gonna go with my other choice, the one
for number 2
that I was just like, oh fuck this. That can fuck right off. You're wasting my time. I don't like this. And I see what you're doing, and it's just so transparent that it's almost like it's aggravating, but also boring. And that's Strange Dogs.
Wait, what? Strange Dogs, the season 6 premiere?
Oh,
you had
thinking about it now, like it gets on my nerves.
Wait, what? You had it as like your favorite season opener of the show. You said that. What? What's going on? Betrayal from Rachel?
No, I'm just kidding. It's Back to the Butcher.
What? Rachel, you're fucking with me.
Yeah. Because, sorry.
Wow. Rachel's a little goblin. Did you... Yeah, I mean, in all fairness, I do this to you all the time. So
yeah.
It's a real... I'm now reaping what I sowed. What have I done? I just feel sorry for the poor listeners out there. Guys, I'm not actually heartbroken and bewildered and taken aback. I'm doing it because you are. I can feel you are. I'm not. I know Rachel. That's right. It wasn't a surprise. It was actually not for me. Trust me, pinky promise. I pinky promise, I swear. Now, Rachel, Back to the Butcher, I said my piece, but why is it number 2 on yours?
Like, looking back on it, it's like, I didn't want to be anywhere that episode was putting us. I didn't want to be on Ceres. I didn't want to be on the Rossi. I didn't want to be on Earth. I just was so frustrated by that episode and being like, I see what you're doing and I want to be engaged, but you aren't doing it for me. And you're being so bombastic about, hey, look at us, we're doing this. We're serious sci-fi. And it was just not doing the basics well.
Well, my least favorite episode of the show itself is one from season 4.
I think we're going to have the same
We're going to have the same one, isn't it? It's from season 4. You asked me what the name of that episode was before we recorded, and I knew for a reason. Can we both just say it's season 4 episode Displacement?
Yes.
Here's the thing about it. It's as simple as this. It's boring. It's a boring episode. I remembered disliking it passionately, but also exclaiming that I bet once we get to the end of stuff, I won't remember why. And I don't remember fully why. I read the synopsis. The synopsis doesn't help you. It's blank. The Rossi deal with this. The Illis colony deal with that. I actually sat today and tried to watch the episode itself. And that was a mistake. Because it's boring. It's a boring, plodding, trudging episode. It has some attempts at unique ideas and qualities in there, but it is just one in which the characters are reverted to pieces on a board that move around. There's not really much to talk about with it. There's not much to think about with it. It is the episode that is best defined as one of those gray, murky middle episodes of serialized TV. I think we all know what I'm talking about. When you watch an ongoing serialized show or season-based ongoing thing, somewhere in the middle or the back half, there's just a string of episodes that are good enough to keep you wanting to watch the next one, but they aren't actually good enough to remember. They are the classic, you will forget any of the specifics of it on a binge watch capacity, let alone a week-to-week capacity. These are disposable episodes, yet they're important technically because we are doing things, but I think it's the example of The Expanse falling into that trap the most.
I think my phrasing when I was just like trying to ask you what the episode was, because it was one that I remembered us talking about and us talking smack about. And I think my turn of phrase was, what was that episode in season 4 where nothing happened, but it was all annoying?
Displacement.
I'm done.
Favorite characters. We each get to choose 3. So I did stick to primary characters. What I ended up really thinking about was who are the 2 characters that really grew on me the most, that I really enjoyed their arcs as well, and the performance was consistent and of a high caliber. My number 3 pick was kind of less so on that last one. Like, it was like, okay, like I felt like they found the character more and more as the show went on. And there is something really endearing about that. And I think it also was the show figuring out what they needed from this character. And it's Holden.
Season 1 coverage, Rachel, would be
shocked.
Appalled.
Shocked and appalled. Little does she know what's coming for her. And the way that Holden develops as a person, and what he gets to do while still being that person. He still has those faults that I had with him in season 1, but they have depth, they have meaning, they have consequences that ripple out way beyond him. It's not just, oh, he fails upwards, which I believe was a complaint that I had in season 1 of like, he just keeps on fucking up and it works out.
We kept asking, why do people talk to him? But the change is important. And I have my number 3, I actually have someone that I didn't expect to be here. And that's Ashford. I thought Ashford was a very compelling character. I thought that he was portrayed brilliantly by the actor, but he was one that started out as a very interesting type of antagonist that I took for granted. At first, I pigeonholed Ashford. Oh, obvious bad guy, like how we did with Burn Gorman. But unlike with Burn Gorman's portrayal and just the character of Murtry, Ashford became something else. He was more than just mustache-twirling bad guy. I actually felt conflicted at the end of season 3 because Ashford, along with Holden, were working towards what they believed to be the right thing. They believed that they were both working on the assumption that what they would do would save humanity. And both sides had great arguments for why they were right. I'm a sucker for bad guy turned good guy. And he gets that in season 4. I loved his relationship with Drummer. I loved his growth of becoming someone who's much more sensitive and has realized the error of his ways and wants to become a mentor. I think of the conversation he had with that random Martian that they were torturing about violence is like indiscriminate. You can use it as a tool, but it will hurt not just you, but not just the people you use it on, but your loved ones as well. I think he was just a character that I took for granted in the show. I thought he was always great, but after we lost him, he was one that just kept ringing in my head. I just kept thinking about him over and over again. Yes. I didn't think he would be in my top 3.
Continues much the same way that Alex does after he dies.
Yeah. They do a great job in the series of when we lose a major character that their loss is felt. But yeah, Ashford, surprise, even for me. I know he's a very popular character, but when we were going through the show, there were just so many others that I was drawn to. But now here at the end, and he has just kept being with me throughout it all. So who is your second pick? Who manages to go below Amos? I mean, Bobby.
But it was two of the members of the UN that I was also tossing up between, kind of before I decided that Holden was 3, which were Ehrenreich and Avasarala. Because Ehrenreich is so powerful and so meaningful to the show. But in the end, I was just like, I feel like it would be dishonest to not pick Avasarala. She's still so high up because, like, she matters so much. And she is such a powerful player in the show. And she's constantly dealing with the weight of being that person. And the show manages to balance her feeling that weight and her feeling the drive for power and control. And that's a really difficult thing for them to manage and to balance. And it was so frustrating when that balance gets thrown off, in the way that it does when she's going through the election cycle, because it feels dishonest in a way. It feels convenient that she does this during this election because she can't be the underdog if she's on top.
Yeah.
And then, she's still the underdog when she's on top of the UN again later. But it's because of the broader context has changed so much.
I love her now. Now she's a great pick. She's up there. She's a wonderful person to pick out there. I have a person that means a lot to me, and that is Peaches. She's my number 2, and I love the performance. I think Nadine Nicole does a spectacular job. She represents one of my favorite things about The Expanse, which is second chances, which is accountability, which is atonement, because she was a villain. She was one of the antagonists. Same with Ashford. Both of them were antagonists that got the chance to live. Many of the antagonists do not get killed. Like, of the big player antagonists, many of them don't just get murdered by the heroes. And I think that's to the show's benefit because Peaches and Ashford both learn from their mistakes and become better people, and in turn learn the lessons from our heroes and become heroes themselves. And they bring good about into the world. But it's that thing that you wrestle with constantly throughout the show is, can doing good things make up for the bad things? And that is actually a conversation that Peaches, Melba, Clarissa Mao had with Ashford. That's the thing that I realized is my top 3. I didn't realize this, but all 3 of them are connected to one another in this series of conversations about, does being good make up for the bad? And Ashford hopes it does, and Clarissa wasn't sure. So I had to put Peaches there. Everyone knows that your top pick is not actually Bobby. We're joking. It's a funny bit. Everyone knows.
It's just obvious.
Everyone knows that your top pick is the automatic pick.
Yes.
It's the character that we were introduced to very early. They were eccentric. They were someone that's defined by their personality, but also their body. Let's be real here. And just say his name. Just get it out there.
Amos. He's so unique. And he works so well for me as a character, not only like just because he is who he is and I find that funny and attractive, but because he feels like, yeah, that's a person that the world of the Expanse would create and would have to deal with. And he is still a human being, and he has to deal with who he has been forged into and question how much control and agency and autonomy he has in all of that. And he is constantly grappling with the consequences of this world and what he was born into and the choices that he's made along the way, the people that he has killed and the people that he has left behind, and also at the same time trying not to deal with those things because he has these theories of how things work. Like, you referred to how he compartmentalizes things, and it's so very clear that he's doing that even when he's not using that kind of language. You can see the processes happening on Amos's face of like, oh, that means that. Like, he's so calculating, and it is so interesting to me how they balance those aspects of him while not saying that he's emotionless. He has a very low emotional awareness and social awareness at different points.
He's stunted for sure.
He's stunted, but it's not like, it's also sometimes like he knows what he's doing and what he's saying is weird to other people. He just doesn't give a fuck about it. Like when early on he's just like, yeah, I got a flop there, and Alex, I think it's Alex, is just like, isn't that a brothel? And he's like, yeah. So what? Like, he knows that Alex wouldn't find it normal to be staying at a brothel.
But that's what he lived
with.
But
that is, it's comfortable to him, and he's not going to change that or pretend like it's not, or like lie about where he's staying, because that's not worth the effort. That's not his problem. I usually get so annoyed by characters who are like, your emotions aren't my problem. And like, a part of why I adore Amos so much is because I find it fascinating that he worked so well for me.
My number one selection is Anna. Of course it is. I thought she was just such a breath of fresh air. She's a compassionate character. She's empathetic, but she's not naive. She's not dumb. She's supremely intelligent. She knows how to maneuver herself, but she's inquisitive. I think she is a great embodiment of what the ideals of the show are. She's the type of person that more people should be, but less people are. But that doesn't mean she's not a person. She is a person. We see that she's willing to do things that we abhor in other characters. She abandoned her family, just like how Alex abandoned his family for a sense of purpose and glory. She did the same thing, but we felt differently about it because Anna is a different character and she looks at the world in a very different way, but she still has the shortcomings that we see in everyone else. And she really was the greatest one to have. You pair her up with this person and you have a fun dynamic. You pair her up with Amos and oh my God, do you get some just breathtaking moments of humor, but also heart. You pair her up with Clarissa Mao, and you get to see what Anna looks like when she's vengeful, when she's angry, when she is having to reconcile the fact that she is just like everyone else, or having her be the downfall of one of the long-running antagonists of the show. We lamented that Marco was defeated by a random admiral who we didn't know anything about, while with Anna, we only got to know her for 6 episodes before she took down Ehrenreich, who had been in 2 to 3 seasons of the show, and yet it all felt natural and real because she's a kind person, and that's all it takes. All it takes. And I thought that it was not only hilarious to see Ehrenreich, this master manipulator, be taken down by somebody who cannot be manipulated by him because they're inherently a good individual, but also she was formidable in her intellect and her moral code. So Anna, for me, often her scenes were the best scene of an episode. I have to put her at the top spot, but she bleeds through to the other people that I chose. Her conversations and her viewpoints that she shared in a scolding manner with Clarissa affected Clarissa so much that then she went on to talk to Ashford, and then that affected Ashford. So Anna is honestly one of the most important characters of the series because her not just her sermons and her long monologues, but even just her short, quick jabs at other characters left something on them and made them a bit different after it. So Anna, for me, is also the person that, damn, I'm looking forward to reading her chapters in the book.
On every side of this are people who have no reason to hate each other. Everyone here thinks they're doing the right thing. Everyone there thinks they're doing the right thing. If we get out of this, we have to find a way to understand each other, to explain why we made the choices that we did. It is the only way that we can let go of the hate.
Who is at your bottom of your bottom, I guess, or top of your bottom? You know what I mean? Like, they're your third least favorite, but in a way, isn't that kind of like a fucked place to be? like you're not even good enough to be number one. Like, with number one least favorite, there's like, ooh, there's oomph to it. But when you say number 3 least favorite out of the 3, it's kind of like, ooh, you're kind of a loser in your own weird way. Who is that? Who is that, Rachel?
It's Bobby.
My jaw hit the floor. But she's better than Amos. She's a top. But why? Come on, now this is your spotlight time for Bobby talk. This will be the last time you get to really Bobby talk it up. So go on.
So fucking annoying. It's so fucking annoying to have the potential of a good and interesting character so wasted. It's so annoying that she doesn't get to do anything interesting. And by the time that she gets to do anything interesting, I'm just annoyed by her presence because she's been so fucking annoying and so fucking boring and so fucking stupid this whole time leading up to this moment where it's like, yeah, she finally gets to do something. And it's just like, well, I don't give a shit about you and you're just going to do the dumb thing and then you're going to walk away and then you're going to repeat the same fucking plot again and 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 again. And you're going to go off somewhere else and do the same fucking process. And it's just like, learn to not trust Mars. Learn to not trust Mars. Like, come on, Bobby. You realized it, and then you realized it again, and then you realized it again, and then you're just like, oh, wait, no, it's not just Mars. It's everyone. And it's like, oh, you don't fucking say.
You sound a little bit passionate about it. Just a little bit passionate. Your
Sorry,
hatred for Bobby.
My spit off the pop
Thank
filter.
you. Clean it off. Rachel was frothing at the mouth, literally. You were never as diplomatic about Bobby as I was.
Nah.
I tried with Bobby. I really did. And she's in my number 3 spot as well for this simple reason. There are other characters that I will probably say are worse than her. But they're smaller characters. And you'll hear my top 2, they're going to be smaller characters in comparison. But when I think back to ensemble shows that I watch, Babylon 5, Star Trek, whatever it is, Desperate Housewives, there's always at least 1 or 2 or maybe even more, of the main players that I just don't like. That's always the case. You know, there's always someone you don't like. Like with you, someone in Gilmore Girls, I'm sure you don't like. Their name's Rory, right? And she's like one of the key characters of the show. It doesn't work without her. She's one of the Gilmore Girls. But in the Expanse's case, I liked our main characters for the most part. Like, yeah, I had some learning curve, like growing pains with them and seeing them evolve. Like Naomi bothered me at some points, Holden bothered me at some points, Alex bothered me at some
what the
points.
show did with Naomi at
certain points, yeah. And Alex barely got anything to do. That bothered me, but I liked him as a character. Bobby was the one that I just looked at and said, they're the member of the ensemble I just don't like very much. Overall, they're the character that brings me the least amount of feelings, other than just as you passionately went through.
Especially in proportion to how much time we spend with her.
As you passionately went through...
But Pancake's boyfriend.
It is about how...
Waffle's boyfriend.
Yeah, of course. We spend so much time on her learning the same things in a very similar way that it becomes absolutely tedious. And it's such a shame because I thought the introduction of her character was one of the best character introductions. I was totally bought in. I think the actress... does like she's a good actress. I have no problem with Frankie Adams. I think Frankie Adams
not her fault
is a good dramatic actress. She's very funny and she brings a physical quality to the role. But Bobby's an action character, and that does nothing for me. When a whole episode we dedicated to Bobby did a flip, who cares? That's it. Bobby did a flip through space, or Bobby lifted something real heavy. Awesome. Yeah. I don't give a shit. It's very
she's the one
very lame.
With the armor.
She's the one with the guns and the armor.
Now, my top two did, like, I was like, who is worse? I had to be honest with myself and go, who did I complain more about?
Oh, yes. That's a good metric to work off of.
Who in the show would I get annoyed at when they showed up? And my number two, that turd also floated and refused to be flushed.
An unflushable, you say?
And all three of mine I consider unflushables. My number two is Havelock.
What? No, that can't be. This is an unforeseen character to pick. I'm totally... What?
Was he on your list?
What? No, don't talk to me. You have to talk to us about why Havelock for you. I mean, everyone knows that I shit on him like he is a toilet.
Yes.
You say unflushable, he's a toilet to me because he's just filled with shit. But why is Havelock someone that gets under your skin?
Because he's so fucking useless. And he's just there as a plot mechanic. He doesn't even get to be a person. And it just falls so flat and feels so hollow that it's a waste of fucking time. And I look back on his whole plot and go, fucking wasted.
We have a large assortment of characters in the series, ones that are ongoing, ones that are one-offs or short time stays or just a season long. And my selection is one that is a very pivotal role in the show, which is antagonist. And that has to go to Murtry. He was my least favorite antagonist in the show.
Oh, yeah, easily for me as well.
The antagonist roles were very important in The Expanse and often yielded some of the best characters and conversations for us to have.
Challenged our protagonists, our main ensemble.
And even us.
And they posed a specific kind of threat, each of them.
And Murtry never wavered from what we saw of him frame one. He is evil corporate guy, thug with a gun. Bern Gorman plays him. That's all you need to know. There is no nuances to him. I don't see it the way that others do. And what I've been
That's we spent so much of the season calling him
Burn Gorman, because it's just so easy. It's just so easy. He's bad guy McBad guy, and I have to have him in my least favorite characters because I don't care about him. The things that often we buck up against and don't like is when we feel the writers and when we see a character or conversation or a plot point be there for the sake of functionality rather than anything more. And that's what Murtry is. He is the antagonist of season 4. That's it. You could go into what he represents, but it really didn't feel anything more than that. He is the guy that they have to go up against, and that is it. But Rachel, you already said Havelock was your number 2.
Yep.
So now I have to be in shock and awe of your number 1 worst character of the show. And you already blew Bobby.
Fucking cockroach.
Oh, of course.
Wouldn't
of course.
fucking die. He wouldn't fucking die. He appeared. He knew he was meant to be dead, and then he came back, and then he was meant to be dead, and then he was meant to be dead, and then he came back, and then he finally fucking died. And I didn't believe that he was finally fucking dead because it took him so long to actually die.
Yes.
Diogo.
Imagine if the dogs found him.
Fuck!
Hey, Rachel, it's me, Diogo. I'm a zombie now. I'm a zombie now. And I smell even more like brute deodorant. Because that's what he smells like. He must smell like reeks of like that gross deodorant. Axe spray. Yeah, Axe body spray. Is Diogo actually that bad of a character, or do you just violently against him because he reminds you too much of kids you teach?
He just got under my skin. Like, it is a me thing, not a him thing. But that's why, like, he raises it to the top because I just got so frustrated by him. But he made more sense. But I'm like, I complained about almost every single scene that he was in because I fucking hated him. And, like, it was the strongest response that a character got out of me in a negative way, I think. Like,
yeah.
Like, it is the one that I was just like, I fucking hate him.
I work at a very different way at this than you. You are going to what gets you riled up, angered, those high emotions, which are fair. But when I think of the things that I don't like, it's the exact opposite. It's the things that make me feel nothing. It's the things that make me lack, that makes me yearn for something to be here.
Oh, I don't remember those characters.
Yeah, exactly. No one does. And I have a list of them, right? We've already said a few of them. Ashanti, why is she introduced in the show? Havelock, what a waste of space, and told poorly. But my number 1, I know it's so hard not to believe it's not Havelock. It is Pancake Boyfriend. Because, seriously, who was that character? Could you tell me his name?
No!
Could you tell me anything about him other than he had pancakes and was Bobby's lover?
Was an ex-Marine, or, like, not an ex-Marine, but the ex-military who was also, like, stuck kind of looking for work.
Yeah, but what was his personality? There you go. He didn't have one. He was there to be someone Bobby spoke to and could relate to. He was a function, and that's it. He had nothing to him. There was no personality. I had no reasoning to believe that Bobby would even be attracted to him, let alone talk to him again. He was a nothing waste of space. He took up time. And so when he had the dramatic scene in which him and Bobby locked horns about her future, and he leaves and he says, well, hopefully we'll meet again, empty. Truly empty. And that for me is one of the worst characters of The Expanse because no one remembers Pancake Boyfriend other than for us calling him Pancake Boyfriend. No one can tell you his name. No one could tell you anything about the character other than what he, literally served in the story. But even then, you wouldn't remember it if we didn't keep mentioning him a lot. If I never said Pancake Boyfriend after season 4 and then I pulled him out, you'd have to be reminded, because that's the truth of it. Everyone needs to be reminded, because it's such a nothing burger. And it's so blatantly poor because we meet characters before him, during the season 4, and after that spend the same amount of screen time, and yet I have an opinion on them. Sin. He was a great character. Eric, great character. Relatively small amount of time they had, but they were great characters, like so many people showed that you could come into the Expanse, have a 1 episode appearance even, and have more weight. What about the person that Amos spoke to before the shootout happened at the lake house? They were a really good character, and like how they talked about their life, really great. Who the fuck is Pancake Boyfriend? Don't know, never will. Waste of time, waste of space, waste of my life.
I guess Ray Butts has ate his last pancake.
There's 6 seasons, Rachel, and I think it's time to update our rankings of the seasons. Where are they now? Let's go from bottom to top. I think we're in agreement with the bottom, which is season 4.
Yes.
I don't think we need to say anything more about season 4 that we haven't already gone through here. What would you have as the second lowest? What do you have? Do we line up?
I put 1.
I also put season 1. It's just messy. It's trying to find its footing, but when it
doesn't trust itself. Like, it very much feels like, oh, we got to do that to be like this, to do that, to appeal to this, to do this, to, like, it feels so, like,
insecure.
Yes. But
we have
also,
metaphors and themes. Do you get it? The hat's not just a hat. Yes, it is, guys. The hat can just be a hat. It doesn't have to represent this fucking magical thing that you've written into the script. It can just be a fucking hat that he wears.
But also, like, it's just like trying so hard to be palatable to a broad audience because it wants the security of another season.
It is a very safe season for sure, but in that it doesn't really show why this should be watched above any other series. It has glimmers of it. So that is something in its favor. And I am interested in seeing it again. To see now that we've gone past it and to the end, does it hold up better? I believe it will, but we'll have to see. So I agree with that. So what's the third of the bottom?
My number 4 was season 6.
Wow. Season 6. I understand why. Because it's also mine. I think we're going to be lined up because I've been talking a lot about what I think of these seasons. Why is it so low down or in the middle area for us both?
It falls in the middle for me because it is fairly solid overall, but it still very much has the dirty fingerprints of the writers and the producers on it.
It's a compromised season.
The Laconia plot is the best evidence that we have for that. And our feelings on that are well documented at this point.
It's just a season that can't fully blossom. It's short, and we often say that it's not the amount of time you have, it's how you spend it.
And they spend it trying to balance too many things. They're
too many things.
Too many plates.
And the things that we wish that they were tending to more, they have to be on the back burner a bit because we're having to do this thing and this thing and this thing. Some of those things, not just Laconia, but some of those things we just don't care about as much.
No.
So that does make it there. My next one, number 3, is season 5.
We do differ.
Okay.
I put season 2.
Well, I'll tell you why I put season 5 before you tell me why you put season 2. Season 5 is strong. It's got some truly just great material there that gets you thinking and feeling. The Philip stuff, the Marco stuff, the Naomi stuff is all there. But there's also just a rudderless quality to the heroes. Holden gets nothing to do.
No.
Nothing to do.
Nothing.
Bobby and Alex get nothing to do after a certain point. You're promised a story with them, only for them not to really get anything offered to them.
Yeah.
And that really hampered my enjoyment of the season. And even the stuff I did enjoy, there were some peculiar ways we got there. I still don't appreciate how Naomi got involved in the Amos and Marcus Philip and Marco plot.
You make very compelling points, and it makes me want to swap them.
But what was your reasons for number 2?
My reasons for number 2 were that there was still a lot of growing pains with that season, and it's just like it felt so close to being great so much of the time that it has a sort of frustration that lingers with that, because it's just like it has home, like my favorite episode of the show, right?
Yeah.
And it also has these other moments where it's just like, oof.
The Bobby stuff.
Yeah. And it spends so much time on the stuff that doesn't work. Like, it overcommits itself. And it ends up feeling really imbalanced because of that.
Do you think that'll be alleviated now that we are in the rhythm of how these seasons work because of the midway through change up, because they are going from one book to the other? Because I think that did make season 2 a little bit weaker for you. I have season 2 as my number 2 because I think it had a lot of just heavy material there, but also could get you on side relatively quickly. Prax is introduced, and within 20 minutes, he was a favorite.
There with him, yeah.
He was a favorite. I was rooting for him. It was masterful storytelling. They did it so well, and they did that so often throughout the second season, with Ehrenreich becoming this fully formed character. In season 1, he was there, he was doing his stuff, but he was a background player. He was there to be a slow burn reveal of being the Machiavellian bad guy. But then season 2 picks that baton up and really gives him some depth. And they did that with so many characters and storylines as well. I thought the handling of the brewing tensions between Mars and Earth was done like awesomely, even in regards to Bobby being a part of the game. We had Christian actually getting to do politics in that season. Like, instead of just conference room talks, we got to see her there in the thick of it with the opposition in her element, putting on her poker face, wheeling and dealing, and big dicking him, flopping her dick on the table and saying, I'm actually the most powerful person here. Fuck you. I can go wherever the goddamn I like. That stuff is why season 2 is really high for me. But also, I think we, selfishly, as a podcast, I think we got so much out of it as conversation pieces. I even think of us talking about the hybrids and like just constantly debating with each other. Do you feel bad for them because they are technically children? Or are they too beyond what we recognize as human anymore to feel bad for them, and rather than you just look at them as a threat? So that's why I have that one high. But you, what do you have as your number 2?
5. And it nudged 2 out of the way, not by a whole lot. Like, these 2 were very close to each other. But elevated just a little bit more for me because of how unique it is. Because it completely shifted the game. And it has this devastating event, and they're dealing with the aftermath of it. And all of these characters are on these really interesting journeys. Like, I think it's probably the best season for Amos.
Oh, yeah.
And I am so happy with what they managed to do with Peaches in this season, and that I care about her so much, and not in like, you know, Wile E. Coyote kind of way, like we did when she was Melba.
Yeah.
So it's doing these interesting things, and it's continuing to build on these themes, and it's really trying to reckon with the damage that humanity does to itself. And it gets really deep into the weeds of that problem. And like Tribes is a great episode for that.
Mm-hmm.
Like to kind of pinpoint it within the season as well. And it's fascinating. And I feel like that season as well, like season 5, managed the budget really well.
It looked pretty great throughout it. You got a lot of impressive action set pieces.
Steady. Like
lots of locales. We got back on like Earth, seeing a devastated Earth. It's also a season of note because the bad guy wins. That's the season.
Yeah.
You get to see the bad guy continuously winning and our heroes on the back foot, and you actually feel it. You feel like they aren't going to win this. Naomi, the battle for her son's soul is lost in that season. She at least feels it, and she has to run away, even down to that point. But to no one's shock, the 3rd season is number 1. And I often come back to it because I think it's the most compact, even though it's very much in 2 separate parts. You have the part where they're dealing with the hybrids and all of the Mao stuff and Aaron Wright and the politics, and then the back half where it's all the ring space stuff. And I just come back to its lean, mean fighting machine. Each episode bleeds into the other really well. There's high stakes throughout it all. And I think they were just at the top of their game writing-wise. I think it looked great. I think that every episode, you could argue, was a great episode in that season. I honestly don't think season 3 really had a major fumble. Even the ones that we had problems with, I'm over it. You know, I had that initial shock of, oh, Prax is gone without any fanfare in the episode after Immolation, but that episode's still pretty good. You know, like that season just had everything that the series promised from the start paying off, and not just paying off, but just growing and evolving and just constantly showing us that this series has more to it. Season 3 was the one I always held up as the best, but I was always hoping that something would surpass it, but it really was the best for me. What about you? Why is it in your number 1 spot?
I think because it manages all of its jobs so well. Like, we have all of this character stuff, we have all of this plot stuff on a small scale, on a big scale, and everything is interconnected in a meaningful way. And I feel like season 3 in particular, it makes you feel the ripples. So everything feels more important and more of consequence and more connected to everything else throughout like the whole season, and not just, oh, that point and that point are going to connect because it has to do that thing.
We're scared, we're hurt, and we're reaching for violence because we can't figure out what to do. But just this once, can't we try something else?
The Yum Yum was stuff that we found particularly arousing, particularly horny, made us lick our lips, throw our hair back, and say, yum, yum.
It peaked early, didn't it?
Or did it? What was the Yum Yum moment of The Expanse, Rachel?
I have to find two things.
That's right. That's right, and I want to hear them. So what's your regular selection and what's your automatic Amos pick for the series, Rachel?
It's hard thinking back on it because there are very blatant sexual moments. There's sex on screen. We start with sex on screen.
At least for one person.
No nipples, though. No nipples allowed.
That happens later for Drummer. She gets nipples.
And that's my pick. Naked Drummer.
Oh, man. I'm a simple man. I'm going to have to give it to Holden having 0G sex in the first episode. Because I haven't listened back, but I don't even think we gave him the Yum Yum in the first episode because we were so turned off by his character that we said, I guess Miller, because it's Thomas Jane with a hairy chest. I think we didn't even.
Yeah, I think we did.
But
too.
that was this is us. This is me rectifying it if I didn't do it. I can't recall, but it is hilarious.
Yes.
That we meet him having 0G sex. There's a fucking pun in that situation where like the overhead's like, get in position for thrust. It's like, oh yeah. They're playing the fucking Black Keys in the background.
Yeah.
Remember when they had pop music in the show of the time? Fucking wild. They dropped that shit. They said, no, Killjoys does that. The Expanse doesn't do that anymore. I have to give it to that. I will give a close...
That's very fair. That's very fair.
Yeah, I will give a close second to what I imagine is your automatic Amos pick, but let's hear if it is, and I will confirm if that's my close second.
It's us finding out that he's a screamer.
That's right.
It's Amos having sex, and specifically the
Yes, specifically what?
part where he comes.
What was that, sorry?
The part where he comes.
Wow, you sound so coy when you say it. How does he come, Rachel?
With a scream.
And he's a bottom, so never forget.
Oh,
He's on the bottom.
I feel...
Way's riding him.
Yeah.
She's riding him like a fucking horse.
Yep.
You know what? She's my second pick. Because she was the person that not only saw that Amos was hot stuff, but actually got the fuck that shit.
Yep.
Monica shot her shot, and she needs to be in the Hall of Fame for being the first person in the series to recognize that he is attractive. That's, that's a character.
Yes.
But Wade,
I'm sure
she got to feel it.
She did. She took control of the situation, but I also think he's just like, yeah, I want to get laid. This is the way that it happens. This is the way that it happens.
I'm on a weird planet. I need to get laid. They don't have a brothel here, so I'll sleep with the fascists. So, Amos, great picks in women. But that's it. That's our coverage of The Expanse, right? We're done? Yeah. We're dusting?
Well, is the show a yum or a yum yum? We should ask that, right? Like, it's fairly obvious.
Listening people? Yumlings? What do you think? Do you think it's a yum yum? I think it's a yum yum.
I think it's a yum yum.
Yum yum.
It is not perfect, but I do agree with the people who really pitched it to us as like one of the best sci-fi of recent decades. Like, I don't think that was overselling the show, which I was dubious about after we got through season 1. It is really solid, and it's really invested in doing the work of making it good and making it interesting and making it make sense.
It's always bittersweet to come to this point in which we wrap up our coverage of a show. The Expanse podcast is not over. We are exploring the books. We have read the first book. We are going to sit down and record a conversation about it, and it will be out soon. So keep your eyes on the feed, and we're going to start cracking into the second book and the third book. That's the goal. I would hope that we get through all of the books, but we're taking it as we come. They won't be out week to week because they're a bit more of a commitment, but we're going to put them out when we're done reading through these books. And oh, there's a lot to say about them. Oh man, that first one, Leviathan Wakes, we've gone through it and we have takes, we have opinions. So stay tuned as we are now becoming first-time consumers of the Expanse in a new way. And there is the video game. I know it's become a bit of a joke point on the podcast, but I am interested in playing the video game. It's a telltale adventure type game with drama from what I have seen. So we may give that a go and come back with a discussion about the game. So there's plenty more of Expanse talk to be had. Rachel, does that make this more or less, or does it not impact in any way the talk of the Expanse? Like, when we wrapped up Babylon 5, it's like, well, no, it's not actually over. We've got these movies and these failed pilots and this new one. They were kind of like lessened the oomph factor. But with this, I feel like it doesn't, because it's like its own separate project.
Yeah, it doesn't quite feel like it's going out on a whimper.
You can find us on all of those social medias. You can contact us on those, leave us a rating and review, and if you support us on Patreon, you can get our episodes early. You can hear what we have to say about those books right now, as well as become a member of our community Discord, where you can chat with us and fellow Yumlings about shows we're covering and or things we're watching and things we're doing. All of this is included in the description below for your convenience. Thank you all so much for joining us on this ride. It has been absolutely amazing. And Rachel, we didn't say his name during the podcast. We didn't say it during this discussion. But the Gaunt Belter...
It didn't need to be said.
If you had to give him an actual name, what would it be? Just a first name. I don't need a last name. But if you had to be the brave writer that had to give him a name, what would you give him?
Oh,
I know.
Yeah, I feel like it needs to be a very belter name.
But all their names are still like normal names.
Yeah.
Like Naomi, and Marco, and Philip.
Yeah, but also like Sin feels a little off the beaten path.
True.
Diogo.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like, a little bit unique. So I'm now thinking of, like, a normal-ish sounding name, but maybe spelt.
I have one.
A little different, yeah.
Max, but with 2 X's.
I support this.
Now Earthers know what it feels like to be Belter.